Are you going to finish that croissant?
Knock yourself out.
Ding dong, everyone, it's Deep Dive Zone, a Sonic reread series for fans of all shapes and sizes. And Lauren, Bruce, the witch is dead.
I mean, calling them a witch doesn't quite seem accurate to me, but sure.
Well, let's leave that mistake in the dust and look at Sonic number 51 here.
Well, this is a pretty fitting cover, I'd say. It's a celebration.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. We don't really have an ongoing plot for these next couple issues here. We're starting this issue with Reality Bites, which is drawn by Sam Maxwell and written by our new lead writer, Carl Ballers. And it is a weird one, and there's going to be a lot of weird ones because they're just kind of meandering around looking for a direction.
Yeah.
After a victory celebration, Sonic awakes to find his friends attacking him, transforming into robots and even destroying Knothole. With the potential of Robotnik's return, he races to find an explanation for the strange world in which he now resides.
On the summary page, it says Robotnik's seeming demise, which, on the one hand, you could interpret that as just because there's a fake out with him returning in this issue. On the other hand, it reminds me that readers probably at the time were like, oh, okay, well, when's he going to come back? And it was probably surprising to see, like,
That
I
he
don't know how
wasn't
many
immediately
issues.
back.
Yeah, it would be before they would kind of set in that, like, oh, I guess he's not coming back.
Right.
And it makes sense in that you would tease, like, oh, maybe he really isn't gone. So in that context it works, but in the idiom in which we know that he really is going to be gone for a really long time, just a bit odd to have this story where Sonic is lost in a cyber dream world that we're not even entirely sure where it comes from.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a bit of an explanation at the end. But yeah, before he slips into that, there's like this celebration section, but like it is the lamest celebration of all time. The cover made it look like a really cool time with lots of characters, but it's literally just like the main freedom fighters that you know standing around being like, wow, isn't this great? Like, so disappointing.
Yeah, it's not exactly a big party,
Yeah.
is it?
Yeah, I guess they don't even really show them celebrating that it's all over. It just kind of, I don't know, it seems like it happened off screen and we just didn't get to see it.
I mean, I would hope so, because that would be a lame party otherwise.
Yeah.
Well, this issue does introduce one thing I really like. I think it's this issue, which is that in these comics, Sonic sleeps in a race car bed.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that.
I think they even took that for the movies, right?
Yes, they did. And it was adorable in the movies, and it's very fitting.
So yeah, Sonic goes to sleep, and then unbeknownst to him, he is now in a nightmare world. I like how sort of sudden the transformation is of the robot freedom fighters. I mean, for each of them, it's like, you know, they're normal and they have red eyes, and then like off panel, then suddenly on another panel, they're just completely robot. It's like they kind of capture the shock it would be from Sonic. It's like, oh, suddenly they're not at all what they were before.
Yeah, and as much as I have very mixed opinions on Sam Maxwell, his art is certainly surreal enough to portray this.
Yeah?
It's kind of just a long sort of sequence. It's like a big rush of adrenaline throughout this whole story. Sonic never really gets a chance to stop moving and talk with anybody about what's happening because everybody sucks, basically.
Yeah, it's just sort of a gauntlet of one after another. Sally, Tails, Bunny, and then he finally gets to showdown with the whole group. He starts to catch on near the end of it, though, with Bunny, and I like to think that she gave herself away because she doesn't call him Sugar, which the real Bunny would.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it also helps that Sonic has these, apparitions of Chuck, trying to break into his mind like the end of Psychonauts 1, but he's stuck talking backwards most of the time.
Is it backwards or scrambled? I tried to make heads and tails of it, and I couldn't find the pattern.
Keneg nid Trembo, Sonic.
Okay.
Hikaske on Hukanox am Yokwa.
Right
Anyway. I like the start of quote-unquote part 4 here, because A, that's when Robotnik appears and he looks extremely sinister and is well rendered in that regard, but also because Sonic on this page utters the phrase, "Whoops apocalypse." And I remember very little about this story each time I come back to it, but I remember whoops apocalypse, because what is a whoops apocalypse? Because it's not whoops comma apocalypse, because whoops apocalypse, that makes sense. It's like, whoops, the apocalypse happened, but no, this is whoops apocalypse. What is a whoops apocalypse? It's an apocalypse of whoops.
Okay, Devin, I hate to rain on your stupid parade, but I think it's just a typo.
Yeah, they literally just excluded a comma. I'm sorry.
That's fucking acid rain, man, it hurts.
But yeah, it's a little hard for me to remember exactly what I was thinking when I first read these, but I believe at this point I was still like, oh, okay, so Robotnik is back, and I was kind of surprised when he wasn't.
Right. I mean, it's safe to say that's why they did this issue, or did this story the way it was.
Kind of like to try to convince readers, no, we're not kidding you.
Right.
It's a very weird way of doing it. Because I think that it would make sense. It would make sense if we were going to, like, allow dream issues to be a thing, you know? Because, like, we've complained, I guess me especially, have complained multiple times about how, oh, this is a story, but it doesn't really happen. But I think Sonic continuing to have nightmares about the war not being over would be a normal character.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So the fact that it is, like, something that's artificially in his mind is very weird.
Sure, you could just chalk it up to Sonic having PTSD and leave it at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that may have been an improvement. Because, yeah, I mean, that ideally is what dream stories would be. They'd be character stories, really.
Sure.
Since there's nothing plot-wise. But instead, they do try to set up something plot-wise here, because it's like, oh, your metal was sabotaged. It induced you in this weird dream thing. But who put it there? And Chuck's like, oh, no, it wasn't Robotnik, because he knows for some reason. I mean, I trust him.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Yeah.
And to this day, I don't remember if they explicitly say who did it. I assume you're supposed to think it's Naugus, but...
Oh, that's interesting, because my theory was that it was Snively.
Oh, that would make more sense.
Well, I guess we'll have to read on to see if there are any possible clues. But yeah, I don't remember an explanation, really.
Yeah, so... Very, very weird issue, but at least straightforward to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as far as self-contained, almost completely skippable stories go, I definitely prefer it over a lot of the other ones. It was a cool read, I think, for that.
Indeed. And speaking of completely skippable stories that I don't prefer over this, we have Sonic the Hedgehog number 52. It's easy to be confused here, because this issue is The Discovery Zone. Written by Tom Ralston and drawn by Manny Gallen, Sonic chases a flying zoot suit into a cave and finds himself in a Casablanca-inspired world of nice clothes and gray hues.
So, first of all, in isolation, I actually really like this cover.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I'm a fan of Sonic looking classy.
Yeah.
Just what the fuck is this?
No, yeah. Not in isolation. This like typifies weird comic stories for me. I definitely remember reading this and being like, what is going on?
Yeah.
That's a good description.
Apparently, I mean, the explanation we got was that last time Rotor did say that when the Ultimate Annihilator malfunctioned, basically, it apparently not only wiped Robotnik from existence, but also created a lot of alternate dimensions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They restate that later this issue, in case you forgot. So, but yes, that is the idea. But, like, not being familiar with Casablanca and reading this, it's like obviously it's a parallel world, right? But even in that frame of reference, it throws you right in the middle of things. You don't really know what's happening. Yeah, very confusing.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
this is a Zoomer brain problem, but even as someone who's seen like half of Casablanca, I wouldn't say this is like a really deep homage. It's really just that they liked the iconography of that kind of not noir exactly, but that muted sort of low key style. But it's just weird. Sonic and Sally both have slightly creepy human proportions. Maybe for Sonic, it's just because he's wearing the suit.
I feel like, as someone who has not seen Casablanca, but I've seen like clips from it, the comparisons I don't even think work. This is a lot more noir than anything like anything like Casablanca.
Yeah, that's why I said not noir. I
Yeah.
don't even know if it. That's the problem. I don't have a good frame of reference.
Well, I will say once again, I do like the style of how this is drawn. It's certainly unique to the comics at this point, so that is entertaining just for that. But as far as what's happening, yeah, I kind of just am like, well, let's judge it on its own. And actually, it shakes out to be kind of Sonic Underground-esque in that, there's like this club, and these high class people are here, and it's like they're using it as an escape from Robotnik, but it's still, it's you've got big old searchlights. It's not hidden or anything. So I interpret this as like Robotnik somehow taken over, but not with brute force, but through the nobility, just like, or the high class individuals, just like in Sonic Underground.
Mhm.
That's a
Or I'm
fair
just trying
judgment.
to, put something familiar on this unfamiliar story. That's also possible.
I think it is funny therein that in this universe where everything is so different tonally speaking, Robotnik is still just a regular dictator that turns people into robots. Like, he's not really changed.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
I know that you're saying he gained power through different means, and that is true, but it's like, those are just regular-ass combots. He just has his normal design in black and white. Or, not, it's not grayscale, it's...
Grayscale's the best description.
Yeah,
Muted
I will say,
colors.
I like that the shading... The way that, like, they're trying to do it makes Sally, like... It looks like she's got, like, blue highlights in her hair. It doesn't look like just the coloring is muted. It looks like she's got, like, a punk rocker hair going on.
I mean, that was what it
Yeah.
looked like to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is funny that 2 issues in a row now that feature Robotnik, even though he's dead. I don't really have a huge number of additional comments other than Sonic running around in a suit looks absurd.
My only other
Yeah.
thing is that on page 8, Sonic is chasing after or getting chased by some robots, and those are definitely the Mystery Science Theater robots.
Yes, they are.
Right, yes, that's true.
I just have to think, like, you're referencing a show that's about ironic enjoyment of bad film, and ironic enjoyment is the most that you're liable to get out of this story.
Yeah.
Just because it's so bizarre and like it's weird because it's very conventional in all other aspects than its visual theming, because Sonic just fights a Robotnik like normal. It's not even that different.
Yeah, I mean, he's like, again, it's like a slightly different situation. He's like a free agent, and then at the end, it's like, okay, maybe I'll join the rebellion, or whatever. So, I mean, slightly different setup, but you're right, same result in the end. And it's weird that they set that up as if it's an ongoing story, but we never come back here, luckily.
Yeah, this story is technically canon, but it might as well not be. This issue does have another story, though, because it has a second story called First Contact, written by Ballers and drawn by Art Mawhinney, where Sally announces the defeat of Robotnik to the world and the plan to rebuild from Robotropolis's ashes. That is a hard phrase to say fast.
Yeah, this story, in quotes, is mostly just Sally being like, all right, did you miss what happened recently? Let me just explain everything for you again. And this is where I was saying they again talk about how the Ultimate Annihilator apparently created the zone in this main story, which I will say, honestly, that's a pretty rad idea, just tearing holes in reality. But the problem is it leads to stories like this instead of, well, maybe, I don't remember. I don't remember all the stories that come out of that. I'm sure some of them are probably at least better than this, but in a vacuum, I think that's a cool idea.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if I were writing this, I would use the Ultimate Annihilator's reality warping as an excuse to make retcons for any part of the universe that I didn't like, but they don't really do that.
You're thinking of a different reality warping event.
Anyway, there's not much to this story. It mostly is just a recap of all the stuff that happened, and that is part of the problem, is that they've killed off the main villain of Sonic as a franchise, and so that means that for any new readers who are already Sonic fans coming into this, they have to reestablish any issue that, oh yeah, by the way, the main villain is dead.
Right.
I hadn't thought about that. I guess that could be a reason why they were doing that.
There is also a Mobian girl on one of the monitors that Sally is talking on, who is a visual match for Mina Mongoose from way, way later in the comic.
I thought that design looked familiar. Are you saying that's not who they are?
No, because Mina is presented when she's introduced as someone who's mostly just a civilian.
Okay.
That's the most notable thing about the story. But that is not the only story of tonight, because while we do have some Sonic comics, we have many more Knuckles the Echidna comics. We're back with that series.
Yes. And it's starting to pick up a little bit.
Yeah, starting with Knuckles number 4 here, we have the Lost Paradise arc, which I'm not going to comment on that reference, but, whatever. I like this cover a lot. I don't know what Knuckles is punching, but he looks badass.
Yeah, these Knuckles covers are often great.
I guess Spaziant is just good in general, but yeah.
Yeah.
The story for this one is The Phantom City, written by Penders, drawn by Gallen. When Angel Island is rocked by earthquakes, it creates tension between the Chaotix and Julie Sue, a deserter of the Dark Legion. Knuckles and Julie Sue investigate the disturbance, only to find the thought-to-be lost city of Echidnaopolis phasing in and out of existence.
I was surprised to see, the Dark Legion member here. Like, it feels like it picks up where the last arc left off. So maybe they're starting to become a little more connected. But it's still drawn in the same way. And Julie Sue is pink, not red. And yet they're still drawn red in the cloak. Knuckles cannot be blamed for misidentifying them.
Yeah, he does accidentally think she's a man at first, and she's like, no, you bitch. But it's like, how can you tell? The red covers up everything. You're wearing a mask or something. Which, she also takes down Vector in exactly one punch. Which, it's like, if we had established that Vector is, like, as strong as he is in, like, the Sonic game canon, that would be impressive. But he's done almost nothing in this comic, so I assume that's meant to make her look cool.
I don't know, or ruthless at least.
Yeah. Knuckles is meditating, but... Well, she tries to sneak up on him and does a bad job, basically. And he pretty much instantly overpowers her, and, yeah, no, we got Julie Sue for proper now, and, she's Pink Girl Knuckles.
I don't know, honestly, don't think I could do any better, but I mean, then again, neither could a lot of Sonic fans, I suppose, as is the stigma at making a character that looks distinctly different. I think it's different enough.
No, I actually don't mind Julie Sue at all. She is definitely one of Pender's most liked creations, mostly just because there's nothing, like, abhorrent about her, and I'm not going to play the usual, like, dramatic sting I do for famous Pender's creations. But yeah, she is a Dark Legion deserter who came to find Knuckles based on, I guess, a mysterious urge to leave the Legion. It's very weird how she just feels like pulled by God or something. I don't know. I'm not saying that's canon, but they don't really explain why she tried to find him.
Well, I haven't read through these comics before. I guess this deconfirms what I was thinking, but it seems like she's up to something sneaky. She's a very suspicious character. I assume she has some reason, and we just learn it later, but maybe not. Oops.
I don't remember.
I like when she takes off the Dark Legion cloak and she's just like, it was never wild about that style anyway. Adding evidence to my theory that they're all just forced into wearing those cloaks and they're not into the whole, Legion of Darkness thing.
Kragok is just very, very eccentric, yeah.
I mean, you're a weird, like, military cult leader, wouldn't you?
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I guess if you gotta do something.
Exactly.
It is so jarring how quickly Julie goes from I'm a punch you all to, well, I guess we're a team now.
Yeah, she despite being a Dark Legion member, she's willing to basically turn on them at the drop of a hat.
It's just weird because if her plan was to meet up with them, I don't understand why she attacked them. And she's like, oh, it was self-defense. Yeah, with Vector, but not with Knuckles. Anyway, I suppose it makes some more sense because, again, I think she's up to something. And Knuckles is like, no, I'll play along because then she'll reveal whatever she's up to. And yeah, that's smart.
Yeah, that's fair
Yeah.
enough.
It's one more person for Locke to spy on. And now we have Saber here, who is Locke's dad, because he needs a dad to coach him at being a dad. And also, like, does not really look that much older, but that's par for the course of these.
He's got some forehead wrinkles, it's fine.
So Knuckles and Julie go to investigate the source of the quakes, and it turns out to be Echidnaopolis, the city from the old legend of Edmund and Dimitri, but it still exists. Sort of.
I mean, not really sort of, it just exists, and it's kind of phasing in and out of existence of this dimension.
That's why I said sort of, Bruce.
Okay, when you say sort of, it sounds more like it's only whatever.
Anyway.
Well, for a second, I was like, is this an illusion? No, it's not an illusion.
Yeah.
It's actually just there.
Yeah, it feels like that's what they want you to think at first.
Right. But this kind of feels like a turning point where really the Echidna lore in the comics is starting to, I mean, it was already going a little wild, but now that the entire city is here in the present, it's like, okay, we've basically abandoned the game's canon at this point. Completely.
Right.
This is one thing that I'm very conflicted on, because Penders basically said in an interview at one point that he understood that Knuckles was the last Echidna in the games, but he thought it would make sense to do, something of a fish out of water story with him suddenly being thrust back into a society that had gone on without him. And I think that is genuinely an interesting idea, and I think that's the reason that Chronicles took from this. It hit on something that made sense.
Well, see, the Dark Legion, I was like, okay, that's fine, because it's a different group. You can somewhat accept why they still survived. And because they're a villainous group, they don't really stick around. I would have been fine if Julie had stayed with that. But having, Echidnaopolis itself be back is a different story, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, and especially since it's heavily implied that, well, no, it's outright stated that everybody else but Knuckles and his friends totally knew this was here. Archimedes knows, Locke knows, obviously.
Yeah. And it's very strange to just be like, oh, hello, my son, says Knuckles' mom. And
yes,
she's
holy shit.
Stating it very matter-of-factly. And he's like, what the hell? And she's like, yeah, no, hi.
This is...
What the fuck kind of coincidence is that?
They instantly, the moment they set foot on the streets of Echidnaopolis, Knuckles' mom, Lara Lay, shows up and is like, hey, son, it's me!
Also, I am boiling here as Archimedes is thinking, I can see we're looking at major damage control here. What is wrong with Knuckles knowing about their own mother? What the heck?
Yes.
Well, the problem is that Locke apparently told him that his mother was dead.
Yes, why did you need to do that? Like, you could... Ah! I want the game canon to be that, like, Knuckles was raised by his mom, who was the last guardian, just out of spite towards this.
Sweet.
We'll give this stuff credit, though. It kind of puts us in the same position as Knuckles, because for the last however many times Knuckles has shown up, we've known him as the last Echidna. But now suddenly we're being told, oh, by the way, the entire Echidna society still exists. So we're put into the same position as Knuckles.
I agree. We are meant to sympathize with Knuckles. Like, it is intentional that he's annoyed about being kept in the dark.
Right.
The problem is, we're not given good justification for it.
Oh, no, justification is terrible, and, you know, I can understand that almost being a way to get us to sympathize with Knuckles.
Yeah.
Well, see, I see what you're saying, Bruce, and I hadn't thought about it that way. That is interesting. But the thing here is, Penders and whatever other writers have already decided to show us something Knuckles doesn't know about, i.e. Locke.
True.
And yet they still withhold what Locke is trying to do. Like, I mean, you don't have to give his whole plan, but they don't give any indication as to why all this information has to be withheld. So
True.
if they didn't reveal Locke was around, it would be less infuriating, I think.
Absolutely. Because then it would be a reveal.
Enough. Yeah.
I mean, it was already a reveal, but it just wasn't a useful one. It didn't do anything.
No, I get what you mean. That is definitely true.
I wonder if you could do like a director's cut of these comics that straight up doesn't show any of those scenes, because almost none of them have any like super meaningful explanations. So,
right,
yeah.
That would be interesting.
Also, just gonna point this out here before we there's gonna be some amount of dialogue on this, but just because it pisses me off. Remember how Kidnopolis was supposed to have gotten rid of all their technology?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
They just decided.
There's fucking Star Wars ships flying around in the back here. There's literally an X-Wing and a Tatooine speeder.
Yeah, they just at some point decided, you know what? We just want our tech back.
What is the Dark Legion fighting against?
Well, they clearly must not, at this point, must not know that Kidnopolis still exists.
Maybe.
I think that's probably true. They do try to give a sloppy explanation for this later, so I'll bring that up when we get there. But for the moment, yeah, that is pretty strange. I do like that after they're forced back to the floating island, that Knuckles gets a second to kind of get infuriated at Archimedes and almost get to the truth, because he asks Archimedes questions, and they're like, Knuckles, please don't ask. You're not ready to know. And he's like, yeah? Who said so? You? My father? And I'm like, oh.
He's already suspicious that his dad is still alive. And then he almost falls down a hole.
Yeah, and then ungratefulness about being saved or whatever. Which, I mean, yeah, fair enough, I suppose. It does seem like this could be a trick to just sort of gain Knuckles' trust.
Sure.
I mean, saving his life is saving his life. He can still say thank you, but I don't know.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. He didn't have to necessarily let on.
But then Echidnaopolis fades back into existence, and when it does, everybody is suddenly in apocalypse panic mode, and I'm not really sure why.
Oh shoot, 2 echidnas zapped in and then zapped out. That must mean that, like, the universe thingamajiggy is falling apart. That's keeping us in a parallel dimension or whatever.
Maybe when they zapped in the first time, they felt the earthquake, but I don't know why they wouldn't feel it during the earthquakes before. I don't know. But yes, that the universe thingy, whatever you called it, they find this statue of a guy called Hawking who made the hyper zone projector, I think it's called, to hide the city. So we're already on another wild goose chase.
Oh boy.
Not yet, though, because Knuckles and Julie Sue are busy being arrested by the Rainbow Squad.
Yeah, I didn't think of it for them being ridiculous for that reason, but the Echidnopolis state troopers are pretty silly, especially with those huge boots they've got.
this is a funny thing because, we're reading the archives version. In the original version, every single echidna you see here, except for Julie Sue and Remington, the police chief, is just the same red color as Knuckles.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
okay. Well, interesting. That's an odd change, honestly.
I think they did what little they could to make them varied in the slightest.
Yeah.
It's hard to judge a lot of these stories because they are so clearly not meant to be taken in isolation.
Well, yeah, no. I mean, they come in 3-part arcs, so yeah, that's just setup. I wouldn't really try to be like, well, so how did that one come off overall? I mean, you could, but it doesn't end.
Yeah, not really. Well, let's not dwell on it. That's my favorite catchphrase of the show currently. Let's move on to Knuckles number 5 here. Do you like what you're seeing on the cover?
Is
yes.
I
This is Fallout. Penders and Gallon, obviously. Knuckles is introduced to his great grandfather, I think it's 7 generations, Guardian Hawking, who explains why Echidnaopolis is using technology and phasing between realities. He and Julie Sue also learn the Echidnas have been at war with a militia of dingoes who kidnapped Knuckles' mother, Laura Leigh.
This first page with the 6 frames of discussion with Locke was an unexpected surprise, but I had to laugh at this. It's great. It's just the same frame 6 times. What the heck?
We can save on panels this way. It's like, this could very almost be a funny exchange here with Locke and Saber talking, because if you look at what's being said, it's clunky writing, obviously, but I like the idea of Locke being like, oh, I know exactly what she's telling him, and Saber's like, I don't know, and Locke's like, well, what do you think she's saying? And Saber's like, I didn't say that I know, I'm just saying that you don't, or whatever.
Right. It's a fairly funny exchange, but
That's how I talk with my dad.
I mean, yeah, of course, so do I.
But the fact that it's the same panel 6 times in a row is very, very funny.
Yeah. I think that's what pushes over the edge of being, like, really funny.
Meanwhile, back at the plot, we are at an Echidna police station with Constable Remington, who is one of my favorite Penders characters, honestly, because he's just like a normal dude and doesn't have any magic destiny bullshit.
He's also got Gohan hair going.
Oh, he's unlocked the ultimate form. Yeah, you're right. But the weird thing for me here is that everybody knows who Knuckles is already.
Yeah, this is like, is everyone here just as creepy as Locke? Have they just been watching him? Like, oh, let's watch. What is this, like the Truman Show or something? Knuckles on the floating island being a guardian, but we were not going to tell him anything. Keep it a secret.
I'm just trying to figure out, how do they even get that information? Because Locke is supposed to be operating in secret, but he's the only one we ever see with access to anything Knuckles is doing. And they're phasing in and out of an alternate reality, so who there has access to trans-dimensional cameras?
I mean, with technology, it's probably easy enough to rig up.
I suppose.
Guess so.
Knuckles and Julie Sue have been brought to this police station, and I said they got arrested earlier because they did get arrested earlier, but instead it turns out they're just being arrested so that we can, talk to you about some stuff and drop you down a hole.
Yeah.
Actually, they get dropped down 2 holes because Julie ends up in a different place than Knuckles, even though it both looks like their chairs just go straight down, so there should theoretically only be a few inches of wall between them when they get down there.
I don't know how this works.
In any case, we don't get to learn exactly what's going on with that yet. Instead, we get to see the Dingo Army.
Yeah, so now we're getting into it. Suddenly the story starts moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and it's like, oh yes, The dingoes back from the Sonic and Knuckles special are suddenly the greatest, oldest arch enemies of the echidnas. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's a retcon, obviously,
Right.
but it sure sticks out like a sore thumb, don't it?
Well, the dingoes are characterized as laser focused on fighting. So I would think the whole time they were imprisoned, they were probably just like making strategies or something to pass the time, because I mean, I don't know, what else would these dudes do to pass the time? And so to them, like, the war never stopped. They were just waiting, biding their time.
I suppose so, because
Yeah, if anything, it was more of a Cold War.
it'd have to be, because literally every single dingo we see is a maybe not as buff as General von Stryker here, but a like grizzled dingo like soldier man, which they all have Nazi-ish uniforms for some reason. I still don't really know what to comment about that, other than don't do that. It's weird. But there are no women or children in Dingo Society, only guys.
They don't need women and children.
I can think of one reason why you might, but okay. And yeah, they're just like endlessly like, echidnas, fucking echidnas. We're gonna get those guys.
Don't you know that pure hatred summons these beings suddenly? They're not born in the traditional sense.
I suppose. Well,
They're
and
summoned from sheer anger.
And that would make sense given what we hear from this old guy, Knuckles' 7th generation great-grandfather, Hawking, who is the guy who built the device, and he looks old enough.
Yeah.
So wait a second. Echidnas could live for 200 years?
Guardians specifically can.
Well, still, okay. They don't explain that, but you're right. I could have assumed as much. Still, yeah. Apparently, a lot of the Guardians are still just around doing their thing.
Yeah, which, I mean, it's kind of. I thought it was kind of implied that they're guardians until they die, or have children and then die.
Well, I mean, technically that is true. Every Guardian who is still alive is technically on active duty.
I guess so, because I guess they can't just retire. They just have a child, and they get too old, they just step down.
No, because Hawking has not technically stepped down, even though he's wheelchair bound.
That's true.
I don't know where these stories are going exactly, but I want all the Guardians to team up at one point. That would be
like
hilarious.
A fucking Power Rangers fight.
It'd be more like a... Yeah,
It's the retired Power Rangers. It's the one from the senior center.
Yeah. So Hawking is like, hey, let me tell you what's going on, and he makes Knuckles watch a videotape of him beating up dingoes, basically, which he used to dress like a superhero, too.
Hey, kid, I know I may look really old, but I was awesome back in the day. Watch these cool videos.
Yeah, and Knuckles basically... This is the thing about Hawking, is that he's basically racist. He thinks that the dingoes are all bastards and, like, not even smart. And Knuckles is like, well, they don't seem that not smart in your video. And he says that they're incapable of having original ideas and just had to steal Echidna shit. And they stole Echidna's nukes, and that's why they had to put Echidnopolis in an alternate dimension.
You know, I'm glad I have you and Bruce here for different perspectives, because I didn't think of it that way at all. I took it at face value. I was like, this is a fantasy story. Right. So it's a fantasy race that is born from pure hatred. They don't have original ideas. This is just how they operate, obviously. But you are 100% correct. He's just racist.
See, this is the problem, is that I have no idea whether I'm supposed to interpret my way or your way, because I don't think that most of the Guardians are ever supposed to be framed as fundamentally wrong. And Penders loves making the fantasy race excuse when people complain to him about things. So it's like, even though I'm reading it this way, I don't know if I'm supposed to be interpreting it the way you are, and if it's just written a bit bad.
Guess only time will tell if the dingoes are developed at all.
Sort of. But yeah, it is a lot of pages to explain that we were at war with these guys and had to put the city in another dimension to survive the fallout, basically.
Yeah, Hawking is super rude to Knuckles also, because he's, keeping asking questions as this huge information dump is happening. And at one point, Hawking responds with basically, "Oh, you're so special, Knuckles. Now shut up and listen."
I honestly kind of respect that, beyond someone like patronizing him and saying, "Oh, you are the chosen one who has to save Echidna society." I'm sorry for that voice. I don't know what that was, but
different mannerisms shake up the whole. We must throw the plot in your face.
Yeah.
Yeah. They also have this big statue of Edmund and Dimitri holding up Angel Island like they're like the founders of Echidna society, but they're not. They're in fact the opposite of that.
Yeah, I don't understand why you would hold these two in such high regard. Edmund, to an extent, I suppose, although he didn't seem to accomplish all that much, not for lack of trying, though. Dimitri, though, do you remember this dude?
No, he was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And especially since since Hawking is the one who brought technology back to Angel Island, he kind of did the opposite of what Edmund believed in.
That's true.
Yeah.
I like it in that it's stupid. I like the reveal that while Knuckles has been here, Julie Sue was just dropped into a waiting room with like some drinks.
Oh, that's what was going on here. That is hilarious. You're right.
And then Remington's just like, "Hey, we gotta go."
Yeah, she's got to be like a representative or something, which I don't really know how that works. But this is the part where Julie Sue calls out, "Wait a second, you've got a lot of technology for having given up all your technology." And then he's like, "Oh, it's necessary," or whatever. And so that's a pretty lame excuse, but I guess it's kind of similar to the Freedom Fighters. There was a moment somewhat like this where it's like, when Rotor was like, "Oh, can we really turn Knuckles into a robot just to fight a robot?" And so I was like, it's what we have to do. So, yeah, there's a parallel there, I suppose.
I would say the opposite, though, because with the Freedom Fighters, you had well, not a concrete argument, but a better one, because Robotnik turns people into machines against their will. As far as I know, the Dark Legion doesn't do that. They're just terrorists.
Just terrorists. That's
just terrorists.
Well, that is different, because if you use technology to not violate people's rights, which, to be clear, Echidnopolis absolutely does, they just don't frame it that way. I don't know.
Oh, no.
And yeah, no, Julie Sue being made the representative of Knuckles, who she has known for maybe an hour.
I guess in fairness, they don't know that unless they have been watching him this whole time, in which case that doesn't make any sense.
I don't know. Like, I guess they must get their information from Locke without him disclosing everything, and maybe they're the ones who disseminate that information among the populace, and so maybe if Locke just didn't specifically tell them about Julie Sue, they would just assume. I don't know. But the actual plot here is that the dingoes kidnap Knuckles' mom.
Yeah. Not great. There's the cliffhanger.
Like, I will kind of so suddenly.
Yeah. Well, because most of it was plot exposition.
Right.
I was gonna say it was better than the first issue just because there was more stuff in it. It's more just that I found it more interesting to talk about, which I guess is a metric, but
I don't really think it's fair to rank two parts of a three-part story against each other. But yeah, I mean, more to talk about, true, but less interesting, I think, structure-wise.
Yeah. Well, it was a lot more of the flashback stuff from the first arc, whereas the first issue was at least straightforward.
Yeah.
But issue 6, Remington's hair is covering his eyes. How can he see anything like that?
Got hentai protagonist hair.
Oh. Spazion also draws Hawking's face extremely, extremely old, like even more so than previously.
So
Like-
done with everything.
He's so done, his face is like melting.
That's one of my favorite, like, boomer meme pages from Hypnospace, is the one that says, "Kid, there's no such thing as a grumpy old man. When you grow up, you stop being polite and start being honest." It's one of those shits. He totally would share the Facebook minion memes.
Oh yeah.
Well, the story here is 0 hour and counting. With the threat of dimensional disintegration on the rise, it's up to Knuckles to subdue General Stryker and end the war between dingoes and echidnas before both sides are annihilated.
Dimensional destruction is just a great combination of words.
I like
Nice
alliteration.
combination, Yeah.
I will say I don't love the art on this first page. Like Lara Lay, her face is a little off. The dingoes also have kind of off faces. It makes them look like they have really long heads and also look a little bit like Scooby-Doo.
Bunch of fascist Scooby-Doos.
Oh dear.
Scooby
Yes.
Deutsch.
An interesting scene. Not the actual first page though, because the first page has the chaotix on it, becoming aware of like the catastrophe happening. Although, so can someone answer what is SPO emerging from? Do the chaotix have an invisible base?
Espio specifically, his house is invisible because chameleons.
That's not how that works. Your house doesn't gain the abilities that you have.
They
Um,
almost never talk about chameleon society in these comics, and when they do, it's under a different writer and also like 15 years later. So
You know, gonna be honest, I never thought about expanding upon chameleon society. Yeah, I usually think of these characters in isolation and not, oh, there's a whole society behind them. But of course, that is what we're talking about with the Kidnopolis, isn't it?
right.
well, and all of these characters will be mentioned in one way or another to not even be from Angel Island. So I don't even know where SBO got that house. You know, maybe he just knows how to build invisible things. Rainbow Valley is where he's from, and I think it's on Angel Island. I actually don't remember.
I think it is.
But like Vector is technically from Down Under. Charmy, I don't remember if Golden Hive is supposed to be on Angel Island either. And Mighty is, I think he's meant to be like separated from his family and doesn't even know who they are or something like that. Or maybe they're dead. I don't remember. We'll learn later. The point is, yes, the first page is the Chaotix becoming aware of things that are going on, even though they will not actually do anything for the rest of the story.
You just gotta remind us that they exist.
Yeah, the main part is the dingoes occupying Lara Lay's house, as well as just to mention Windmacher, who is the man that she's currently dating instead of Locke, because Locke fucking sucks, and they are indeed divorced.
That's fair enough.
And I will say, Locke's behavior makes a lot more sense if you imagine him as the most divorced man on the planet.
Oh. Oh dear. Anyway, so I don't get, again, why Julie Sue was supposed to be like helpful in this whole interaction. Because Knuckles just shows up and just punches everyone, saves his mom, easy peasy.
Well, so I think Julie Sue was supposed to be there to negotiate on Knuckles' behalf. They weren't expecting Archimedes to teleport Knuckles here. So they figured, well, you know Knuckles for like 45 minutes. You can negotiate on his behalf.
It would have been an opportunity to show what she's actually good at in that regard, but yeah, no, it's the Knuckles show, despite his lack of agency. But yeah, so we basically got to save the rest of the hostages, because they've got more beyond that.
Hell yeah.
Right, that's true. One of the dingoes' names is Vermin.
Yes, it is. Also, we get a little bit of fucking Hawking doing the same Echidna Guardian bullshit as all of his kids and just spying on people, but we also see that he has his own guardian aunt.
Yes. Good old Dio, who also can live for 200 years. Because when you're a guardian, you can just live as long as the plot needs you to.
We didn't mention it in the first arc, but there was also an aunt that Edmund and whatever his son was named, Steppenwolf, had. It was named Christopheles. Again, with the very Christian names for all of them. But
So yeah, this bit with Hawking reveals something I didn't expect, which is that there's suddenly an intersection with the Knuckles plot and the Sonic plot, because apparently this whole thing was kicked off from the Ultimate Annihilator. It like screwed up the dimensional thingy for Kidnopolis. I don't remember. It's like Hyper something. I don't remember the name. I don't care. But I did not expect that to be the reason.
Yeah, I actually think
Yeah.
that's good crossover. What I don't like is that I don't know if it's mentioned in this arc specifically, but like the Echidnas never even fucking bothered with Robotnik. Like they thought he wasn't even a threat, and now we can see exactly how that's working out for them.
That is pretty great. I hadn't realized that. But yeah, we're safe in a parallel dimension, and our guardian is safe on his own because he's got a great dad.
Hell yeah.
Ugh. So the solution that they work out is basically they have to get this plan made to gather up everybody, and of course they don't want to gather up any of the dingoes, but it's like these guys are actually like dudes, they are people, but they basically just got to get a bunker to wait it out. And it is weird because they are like, oh, we don't want to bring those dingo filth here, and it's like, oh, but we got to do that, but we gotta save them because they do our people, which is a very weird thing, because when we're hard cutting from that to they're just gonna execute random people in the streets.
Okay, real talk for a second. What on earth am I going on about? Knuckles does not say anything like this in this scene, and I think Lorne and Bruce could tell, but we're just like being courteous and not saying so. I think I might have been imagining a more nuanced version of this story where the dingoes were actual people, maybe with women and children instead of just being cardboard cutouts of Nazis for Knuckles to fight. Like a normal story that wasn't really weird about all this. Don't know what to tell you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can get there in a minute, but there's a bit of backstory here with Laura Lay, which reveals what you were talking about. Right, so they were divorced, and for good reason, too, because apparently she was barely able to have any say in how Knuckles was raised. Locke was just like, no, he must be a guardian and all that jazz. Stupid, dumb, destiny, whatever, garbage. And yeah, so that sucks.
Mm.
Yeah, Locke is completely possessive, and yeah, no, they don't even really confront that. It does make me feel bad for Laura Lay, at least, but I do think that is at least a little intentional, I hope.
What do you mean intentional?
Just in that, up to this point, I think the story is mainly sided with Locke, and here I don't think it is entirely.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. At the very least, it's like she's distressed, and so, that's, I don't think, supposed to be a good thing. Maybe it's like, oh, she doesn't understand or whatever. But yeah. But yes, so as you were talking about, those dingoes, they are comically evil. I really like Commander Rat here, also has a great name, when they're like, now I shall execute you all. And then it's like, click, oh, our guns weren't unloaded. We're playing my favorite game, and you'll never know when it gets real. What the heck?
Yeah. Well, and it's weird because it's like, if you were playing up stereotypes and it was all a big joke about how you're not going to shoot random people, A, that's psychotic, but B, it's like, that's a joke on the audience rather than those people, because it's just, this is not real behavior.
Well, no, he's just psychotic, like you said, which again makes me think that they are just actually evil.
And it is very difficult for me to contradict you.
And then Knuckles breaks it up by saying, it's crunch time, people, again.
I hate it so much. Which, that does work, because somehow by punching people in the face, Knuckles manages to save everybody, including the people he punched in the face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is how you herd people to safety, is by fighting them.
I mean, if people are unconscious, then you can pretty easily bring them along, right?
That is true.
That apparently is the mindset of General Helmut von Stryker here, who is ready to attack using, I'm serious, it's called the Power Glove.
I love the Power Glove. is so bad.
Yeah, so this guy was already kind of funny, but this puts it over the top. This guy is hilarious. He's like, I'll get a supercharged glove and I'll just punch you. Ha ha ha.
Nazi dingoes, licensed by Nintendo. Yeah. And of course, the ultimate goal in this is not actually to beat him, it's just to make him stop, because he has literally no reason to be doing this when they're all going to die.
No, yeah, and
True.
so then once again, it's like, I don't know what this is supposed to be, because Stryker is like, okay, I don't like this, but sure, yeah, let's not all die. That would be really stupid. And so he is somewhat reasonable in the end.
Yeah.
It's the tonal failing of, I think, just the Knuckles comics in general, is that it's not sure what its actual take is on any of the things it's trying to portray. I mean, obviously Nazi's bad. That much is probably true, but it's
Yeah.
is this guy meant to be like a complex, morally gray, well, not morally gray, but morally complex character, or is he the cartoon supervillain who you have to punch to win? And the answer that this comic comes to is both.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, he's portrayed very comically, but in the end, they're able to save the day. No one has to die. I mean, maybe a few randos, but I didn't see anyone die.
We have a heroic anti-climax where he simply stops and they all get in the bunker and they wait out the dimensional realignment, I guess. I don't know how exactly this works, because everybody gets in the bunker, and by the time they get out, Echidnaopolis is back on Angel Island, but everything's fine. Like, the city is fine. Nothing happened to the city.
Yeah, the way they described it was actually kind of interesting. It was like Dingopolis and Echidnapolis were both going to try to materialize in the same place, and that would, like, be really bad. But that doesn't happen at all for some reason.
Well, that does happen, I think, because I think Dingopolis is destroyed, and that's part of the tension with the dingoes in the rest of the series. But the weird part is that, like, if the city would be fine, why wouldn't any of the people in it be fine?
Yeah, I don't know. You know what I also don't know about? Is the fact that Catweasel flies by and Knuckles doesn't get instantly enraged for some reason.
Yes, I knew you were gonna bring that shit up. He also looks much more like a normal bird. He doesn't have, like, the cocky expression, which means that I like to imagine that Knuckles is just hallucinating all of his dialogue when he talks to him because he just hates this one bird that fucking much.
Must be.
But yeah, that's the end. Hawking gives his hat to Knuckles, which is the Sonic OVA hat.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, that was supposed to continue being part of Knuckles' design throughout the rest of the comic, but Sega was like, no.
Really? That's lame.
Shows Sega doesn't know what's right for their character.
Well, I mean, on the one hand, not always, but...
Ooh, boy. What an arc this was. We have a lot of elements on the table. We have kind of a race war going on, we have a weird convoluted dimensional rift, and we have Knuckles struggling to fit himself into all of this stuff that he has no context for. But, that's the stuff that's intended, but Knuckles is struggling to maintain relevance in a story that's supposed to be his, I think, is my issue.
Well, I don't remember if I said this yet, but the Knuckles comics very much feel like they're more general Echidna comics, and they needed a main character that wasn't Sonic.
Yeah, that's a good take.
I agree, and I don't know if that was a positive or negative comment or just simply an observation. But personally, I think it works pretty well. I don't think that Knuckles is left behind exactly, because he can still come in and punch people and save the day. But yeah, he's not the focus all the time, which I would honestly prefer. The hero can be, important and be integral in solving problems, but doesn't have to focus on them every single frame, which, I mean, the Sonic comics don't do that either. But I like sort of more a balanced look at all the different characters.
No, I like that. My comment was in reference to it feels like Knuckles does not have a defined role here. The story just kind of happens at him and he has to react to it. Whereas I view Knuckles as kind of a more proactive person.
I mean, when he sees a problem that is relevant to him, he'll go and he'll fix it. But much of the time, he's more focused with keeping things in balance, right? He's a guardian. So I think that makes sense.
I guess it's more a case of the ratio of punching things to just being talked at.
Oh,
Fair.
okay. Well, yeah, that part of the story I agree is a bit much, and they keep doing it.
Yeah,
We really do
I guess
feel
I'll just
for
have to get
Knuckles,
used to it.
as Bruce was saying. Yeah, I think there's probably a lot you could trim out of this. Just condense it a bit, especially when we're talking about issue number 5. That probably didn't need all that explaining. But as a whole, I enjoyed this arc, I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
I am indeed giving my point for this week to Knuckles over Sonic's comics.
Not much of a contest, really.
It really isn't.
No, Sonic is struggling to find his footing, and even though I don't love the Knuckles comics, they certainly act as if they know what they're doing.
No, yeah, it
Yeah.
feels like they're going somewhere now.
I guess Knuckles has the benefit of not having his main villain suddenly yanked out from underneath him.
Yes, I think the thing is, the Knuckles comics have lots of developments, about like the characters and sort of what's happening. Even if it is just one problem and then another problem, and Knuckles is kind of getting thrown around a little bit. That's true, but not necessarily a bad thing, I think. And usually the shifts in status come with reveals about like I was saying, the different characters, or what's really going on. Knuckles is getting closer to the truth. Heck yes, and that sort of thing. Whereas the Sonic comics don't have anything really grand to say. Just okay, Ultimate Annihilator wreck stuff, which the Knuckles comics did that too, except better.
Yeah, they just kind of had to
Yeah.
wing it. And we will be seeing more winging it, but that is going to be next time. As for tonight, I think we're done.
Yeah.
So thank you all so much for watching. If you liked this video, then I would implore you to share, comment, and subscribe. And if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, you can contact us at deepdivezonepod@gmail.com or at deepdivezone on Twitter. Have a great night, and we will see you next week for more fucking weird shit, probably. I don't know.
I hope so.
Better be.
See you later, guys.